One of my favorite tricks in making guitar sound heavy is to triple track them with the same exact guitar. So we compared this Buckethead guitar the other day against a Les Paul Les Plus and against a Blood Moon. And for me, it was probably the weakest sounding of the three guitars. But a true testament to how good a guitar really sounds running wild on a mix, for me, is whether you can double or even triple that guitar and how good it sounds. And by that I mean, if you guys look at my screen right over here, I have Buckethead 1, Buckethead 2, Buckethead 3, left, right, and center. And the reason being is I played the exact same guitar, this Buckethead baritone 24 fret Gibson Les Paul with the two Atari kill switches 3 times. Now, the reason I've done that is, first off, this song I'm about to play for you is in C. So having a 27-inch scale length, a lot of the times I find when I detune guitars to drop C, they sound kind of muddy and poopy. And it's not to say you can't do it, you can't put thicker strings on, but having this really long scale, 27 inches, when you go, the sustain, but also the intonation. So like what you'll hear in this song, as we'll go to the middle section over here, this part, if you listen to that, I'm doing this kind of like vibrato, like that mean dime bat, shake it out. But the problem is if you have a bunch of guitars and you're already detuning them, they may not have the exact same intonation. So one of the things is when you're doubling guitars, especially when you're playing low, is the intonation. When you double them, if there's one little thing out or one guitar sounds a little bit weird or poopy up here, but it's perfectly in tune down here, you'll hear that across 3 tracks. So one of the great consistencies of using the same guitars, you'll have the same quirks and idiosyncrasies, but also you get like the full around Randy Rhoads triple tracked sound of that guitar. And one of the things I think is so important in making something heavy, a lot of people think the more gain, the better. The higher the output pickups, the better. But what I have learned, and one of the things that this, if anything that this demo should show you, is playing pickups that are really clean sounding. These Alnico DiMarzio pickups that Buckethead uses, they're very, very classic sounding. They're very clean sounding, which also means if I send them through high gain amps, they have that real bark to them, but they're not fuzzy or farty or any, because they're very, very clear. They'll take a high gain amp, like I'm using, first off, my Kemper, but on this song I use a 5153, I use a Diesel VH4, and I use a Soldano SLO, 3 of the greatest amps on the planet. So the concept is use the same guitar, but hard pan the guitars. So one hard left, one hard right, and then one down the middle. That's what they did for all the Randy Rhoads solos. But if you play really tight together, as you can hear in this playthrough, I like to think I played it halfway decently. It gives you that real huge stereo imaging. Like a great example of this is Zakk Wylde. Zakk Wylde uses, JCM 800s, and he has, his Les Paul sound. But one of the things that makes it sound so huge is the fact that the JCM 800 is a very transparent amp. It's very clean. So when you try to play heavy stuff on it, it's not the same as if you play a Mesa Boogie triple rectifier, or if you play a 5153 turned all the way up. Like they have super gain. So let's take a listen to it because, we have this main riff right here, but right out the left channel, we have the 5153. Now, let's combine that with the SL60, the SLO 60, Soldano. Now, let's throw the VH4 down the middle. And that's my sound. Now, one of the things I've done too, is if you look at the screen, I also have a high pass filter. Now, I'm not saying I don't want the low chunky chunks, but you gotta have some room for your kick drum and for your bass to cut through. So if you really want your guitars to sound heavy, you don't want to step on the dick of your bass player, especially if you're playing an 8-string guitar. It's one of those things where people think, oh yeah, dude, I want my sound to be so like ballsy and knock you out. Like, you see Dimebag Darrell. His old Randall Warhead, it came with a 412 and a 215. None of those frequencies I'd ever get out of a 15 cabinet would I ever use. It's going to sound poopy. There's a certain space for the guitars to live, which is why when the bass and the drums come in, it sounds awesome. But if you listen to all three of these guitars by themselves, it's got a heaviness to it. It's not quite as ballsy as if I had it right next to the 412 cab, so I've carved out some room frequency-wise to make it sound huge. But let's listen to each one of these guitars separately. So, this is through the Soldano SLO. Again, in my Kemper, so I'm plugging directly in. As you saw, directly in here, not worrying about any microphones. I pull up my Soldano SLO, 60 freaking amp, and it sounds unbelievable. Now, this is the diesel VH4 straight down the middle. Same guitar, just coloring it just a little bit different. So then when you blend them together, it goes across the head. That's the idea. If you're playing the exact same thing, the exact same way across the head, it gives you this cool stereo imaging, which makes it sound way bigger. The only thing I can say that sounds better than 1 good amp is 2 good amps. And the only thing better than 2 good amps is 3 good amps. But you have to start saying how much is too much, because you don't want the guitars to take up so much frequency that you can't hear vocals, you can't hear bass, you can't hear drums. So I like to triple track things. But the biggest surprise of all of these things was the clearness of these pickups, the low output through these high gain Kemper profiles to get this super, super heavy tone by just tripling it. I tend to love to use multiple guitars. I'll use a PRS on one side and a Gibson on the other side. But because this guitar stays so intonated, I just used it all 3 times. And I gotta tell you, I'm real happy because that's heavy sound. There's no effects, there's no compression, there's no nothing. This is what I recorded. And it's because I triple tracked the guitars, not particularly high output pickups, into a high gain Kemper profile, and then hard left, hard right, straight down the middle. And if you can play tight with yourself, you too can sound heavy.
Why don't you smash that subscribe button already?